All right, are you ready? Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Specifically, we're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about how you know you have it, and the big question, the question at the front of everybody's minds, how to overcome it. All right, now this is especially for you if you are someone, you have awareness of imposter syndrome, but somehow you're hiding from it. And what I mean by that is, what comes to mind is a recent conversation, actually a number of conversations, one of which took place at the Black Council Forum a few weeks ago, and the discussion around imposter syndrome. Now, if you were at that event and you saw me speaking on the panel, then you will recall there were a couple of mentions a couple of references rather, to imposter syndrome. And I can't remember who said it, but there was a suggestion that, oh, I know we're not supposed to talk about imposter syndrome, right? And one of the things I said when I was on stage on that panel was, we absolutely must, and I encourage that we do talk about imposter syndrome, and we can talk about it all day, every day if we want to, however much we need to understand fully how it is showing up for you and how it may be holding you back. So by hiding from it, what I mean is, if you are someone who has heard, you have picked up, you have been involved or engaged in conversations where it's like not cool or it's not acceptable or it's wrong to talk about imposter syndrome in the context of being a Black lawyer. And as a result of that, what you're doing is, although you have certain feelings or experiences or thoughts, or you're showing up in a certain way that makes you suspect that you do have imposter syndrome, you are hiding it or keeping it under wraps because at the moment, or in the environment that you operate in, it doesn't feel like you're supposed to have it, or doesn't feel like it's right to have it. Okay, so I'm definitely talking to you, and I really had you in mind when I initially thought about doing this, what I'm going to call complete episode, where I'm talking about what it is, how it shows up, and what you can do to overcome it. But I also have you in mind if you are someone you've heard of imposter syndrome, but you don't think you have it. Now, I have done an episode recently where I talked about the difference between internal imposter syndrome and environmental imposter syndrome. And what I want to offer, if you are a Black lawyer, I want to offer that environmental imposter syndrome comes up for you. It is something that you experience. And that even though, or even if you're not walking around telling yourself you are going to be exposed, or you're a fraud, or your success is down to luck, even if you are not walking around saying that to yourself or thinking that, it is highly likely that if you are a Black lawyer and you're working in a white corporate world, you are often made to feel like an imposter by the fact that there are no role models, by the fact that there are so few people who look like you, by the fact that it doesn't feel inclusive. You often feel excluded, by the fact that sometimes you feel like you can't be your true or your authentic self, by the fact that you're sometimes, or maybe a colleague is subjected to microaggressions or racism. All of that can make us feel like an imposter. And I want to say that that is every bit as valid in how you are, obviously in how you're feeling in the workplace, but how you are showing up, your approach to your work, and the impact that is having on your career and your ability to progress in this industry. So it's also for you, if you don't think you have imposter syndrome because you don't walk around thinking you're a fraud, but actually you're a Black lawyer in a white world, in which case the experience you have is similar to that, and the effects that has on you is tantamount to imposter syndrome. Okay. And then thirdly, I want to speak specifically to those of you who are really resisting it, right? Who are really on a crusade to say, we don't have imposter syndrome. It's the organization, it's the firm, it's the culture. They need to fix themselves, and it's not us. And what I want to offer is that this episode is presented to you with love and with complete understanding for where that campaign, I'm going to say, is coming from, where those beliefs are coming from. And I want to invite you to just open up your heart to the value that I'm going to share with you in this episode, because even if the whole thing doesn't feel like it's directed at you, you are going to learn so much. There are so many gems in this episode, and you are going to take value from it. Okay, so what really I want to do for all of you who are listening to this is to stress the importance of just properly understanding imposter syndrome and fully engaging with it. What I want to offer you is that the more willing you are to do so, the more willing you are to talk about imposter syndrome and therefore how potentially you are holding yourself back, then the further you will go and the easier, my friend, it will be to get there. Okay? The more willing you are to engage or think about how you personally are holding yourself back, so not how it's them and not all the things outside of you and how that needs to change, but how you are holding yourself back, the further you will go and the easier it will be to get there. I want you to think about the example analogy of driving a car. So many of you are going around, it's the equivalent, who you are in your career or what you're doing in your career is you have your foot on the accelerator, right, to move forward. But at the same time, you are also pressing the brake. This is such a great analogy for like how we might be holding ourselves. It's like ourselves back. It's like you having the brake pressed down at the same time as the accelerator. And what's happening, and I hear so much, is that you think that it's the firm or the organization or your company, right, that is pressing the brakes. You know, I don't know if you remember when you were learning to drive. It depends what stage you are in your career and in your life right now when you're listening to this. But I have I have 4 teenage boys now. Actually, no, my eldest is not a teenager anymore, but I'm very close to the experience of them all like learning to drive. And it's when they first set off with a learner driver and then they're in one of those cars. And if you have any memory of this, if you're sitting with a driving instructor, they're sitting in the passenger seat and I think they have brake pedals so they can press on the brake, right, if it's an emergency. Let's say the learner driver gets a bit carried away with the accelerator. Then there is somebody in the passenger seat who's basically controlling the car. They are able to press that brake at any given time. Now, what I think is happening for so many of you, or I want you to think about it, it's an interesting way, is that you are the learner driver. I know you're not a learner in your industry, but you are in the driving seat, right? And you have an accelerator and you have a brake. You think that the brakes are being put on by the person in the passenger seat. You think it's your firm. You think it's your organization. You think it's your company that is pressing the brakes, holding you back from progressing. When actually it's not, there's no one else in the car. The circumstances of where you work, how inclusive or uninclusive it is, how diverse or undiverse it is, that's all happening outside of the car. What matters is what's happening inside of the car, and you are the only one in the car. You are the one driving. So if you're feeling the resistance, you're feeling like the brakes are being, like the brake pedals being pushed down, that's because that is you doing it. So I want you to really think about that. So what we want and what this episode really wants to do at the highest, broadest level is to bring your awareness to that. Bring your awareness to how you are pressing on the brake, and in particular, where the reason you're pressing on the brake is imposter syndrome. Okay, I hope you like that little analogy. I think it's a great one to really think about. So my goal today then is to clean all of this up for you, clean up any confusion that you might have about what imposter syndrome is, whether you have it, how it shows up, how it's holding you back. I want you to go away really clear with a clear sense of like being able to recognize it when it is triggered. And I say that because the experience of having imposter syndrome isn't for everybody an experience of constantly feeling a certain way, constantly feeling, having the experience of self-doubt. I'm just going to use that generic description for now before I get into the detail. It's not necessarily a constant feeling. For many of you, you are actually operating kind of really well throughout some parts of the day or large parts of the week, but then something happens which will trigger your imposter syndrome. So I want to offer that as both a reaction that you have to something that happens in the moment, as well as also being or otherwise being something that is constant within you and something you fear and carry around with you. Both of those things are just as valid, those experiences of imposter syndrome, and you might dip in and out of those different experiences depending on where you are in your career. Okay, so you're going to be clear about what it is, and I'm really going to give you such a great definition of imposter syndrome that's going to like illuminate the way forward for you and really prepare you for the solution that I can't wait to share with you about how you overcome it. So getting clear on what it is, you're going to be able to recognize it when it comes up. And remember what I said, if you're a black lawyer in a white world, it will come up. This is the black experience. And then thirdly, I am going to share with you how to overcome it so that instead of being something that is holding you back, instead of being the brake, right, that you're pressing in your career at the same time as pressing the accelerator, instead of holding you back, it gives you the confidence to succeed. That's right. What I'm going to share with you is going to take imposter syndrome from being the thing that holds you back to the thing that gives you the confidence to succeed. That is my promise to you today. Okay, so let's talk about what imposter syndrome is. Now, I've broken this down into two elements. There are two parts to it. This is how I want to invite you to think about it. Imposter syndrome, first and foremost, it is a consciousness of difference that makes you question who you are. This is the first part. Imposter syndrome is a consciousness of your difference that makes you question who you are. I'm going to break that down and explain every single word. I realize it's quite a wordy sentence. So consciousness, all I mean by that is that you are either aware of something or you perceive it. And I want to offer that imposter syndrome doesn't care about the truth. Right? So if you fall into the camp of someone who genuinely questions your right to be here, right? Whether your success is down to luck, it doesn't actually matter to like your imposter syndrome. It doesn't actually matter whether you worked really hard, deserve to be here, won all the awards. That doesn't impact your consciousness of your difference and that making you question who you are. Okay, so that's why I include the word, like I use the word consciousness, because it could be like you're aware of something, aware of being different, or you perceive that difference at some level. Okay, so that's the consciousness part. So a consciousness of difference, what does that mean? The difference can be of any kind. Of course, the difference of your ethnicity compared to those around you, your gender, maybe it's both, your sexual orientation, your socioeconomic background, your education, your age, your journey, your life experience. There is no end, there is no limit. What it boils down to is your awareness of how something about you is different to the majority of those around. And that awareness or that perception of difference makes you question who you are. And all I mean by that is at the most simple level, it has your brain thinking, who am I? That is like, if we could simplify this right down and say, what is imposter syndrome? It is literally the awareness of your difference that makes your brain go, who am I? That's it. And so that's why we need the second part of this definition, an understanding of how imposter syndrome works, what it is. So there's the question, who am I? And then what happens is your brain wants to answer it. It goes straight to answer that question. Now, right now, your brain, and for most of you, and certainly what my brain did for years and years and years, what it does is it wants to answer the question by like taking in all of the information from around you, okay? So the question, who am I? It looks all around you, and what does it see? In front of you, around you, it sees all of the people who aren't you. And so what it does is it interprets, well, okay, these are all the things I'm not. It's kind of a really lazy way for your brain to answer the question, who am I? Because all of the information around you just tells you who you're not. And so our brains that want to be really efficient and can be really lazy and take shortcuts, it just offers you, this is who I'm not, okay? The awareness of all of the things that you're not. And that's what can create those feelings of insecurity, of being not enough, of feeling isolated, of feeling excluded. I'm going to come to those feelings in a moment. But that's the reason why it can feel so terrible when your imposter syndrome is triggered, is because your brain is asking the question, who am I? And it's answering that question with reference to what's outside of you. So what I want to offer, and what this is, and this understanding, like just really looking at a deeper level of what imposter syndrome is, I want to offer that this opens up so much opportunity for us to choose a different response. Because that response that your brain has, reverting to all the things that you're not, that's just like its default. What we get to do is we get to choose. We can choose a different response. And I'm going to come to that different response in a moment. But before we get to that, let's talk about how your imposter syndrome shows up then, right? So that brings us to the second part of the definition of imposter syndrome, and that is how your brain answers that question. So right now, what your brain does is it looks for the answer to that question, who am I? It looks for the answer outside of you. It looks in front of you at all of those around you, right? The problem is you don't see yourself in those around you. You see only who you're not. So what your brain does is it sort of reverts, like seeing only who you're not and that everybody else is a certain way and you're not that way. To take the very simplest example of you being a black lawyer and it looks around you and sees that everybody else is a white lawyer. Like this is the trigger for your brain to revert back to the evolutionary programming of playing safe, right? Of self-protecting. It is literally like judging yourself, trying to answer that question, who am I? By looking outside of you, that causes us to sort of shut down, self-protect, and want to play small. Now, all of this happens in an instant. The first you are aware of it, if you're aware of it at all, is how it shows up in your thinking, shows up in how you feel, shows up in the actions you take, how you're showing up to your work, and we can see it in the results that you are creating. So let's talk through those one by one. So at the thinking level, you might have those very classic thoughts that we typically know and identify as being imposter syndrome. Thoughts like, I'm a fraud. My success is down to luck. Any minute now, I'm going to be exposed. Those are the thoughts that might show up when your imposter syndrome is triggered, and that's how you know you have imposter syndrome. Now, some of you, that will really relate to that. That will resonate with you so deeply. When I first came across this definition, the classic definition of imposter syndrome, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how perfectly it matched how I had been feeling all of these years. And I couldn't believe how well it described that messy experience I had every time I wanted to show up to something, go for a new goal, try to excel or achieve something. I couldn't believe how perfectly it described the thoughts and the words in my brain. Now, for some of you, that won't resonate at all. And I want to say to you, like, don't go away, because that isn't the only indicator or sign you have imposter syndrome. There's more to imposter syndrome than thinking you're a fraud or that your success is down to luck. There's also what happens at the feeling level. You feel isolated. You feel alone. You feel like you're not enough. You feel other than. Think about it. Think about the word imposter. Imposter is exactly that. Someone who, like the expression indicates someone that doesn't belong. So you can feel like you don't belong in a place, even if you know you worked hard to get there. And that feeling can come just as easily from like internally, from your own generated thoughts and thoughts generated by your own experiences, or it can come from outside of you, your environment. That's that environmental imposter syndrome I was referring to. Okay, so if you have any of those feelings at work where you feel isolated, alone, other than, not enough, this is a sign you have imposter syndrome. Okay, so let's look at how you're showing up. Maybe you're not aware of those feelings, but are you doing any of these things, which are indicators as well that you are experiencing imposter syndrome? You're overworking. I use that to describe all the work that you do. That's additional work. It keeps you working twice as hard, but it doesn't actually add more value. So if you're someone walking around and your approach to your work is, I have to work twice as hard, it has to be perfect, I have to hold myself to a higher standard, that is overworking. That is a sign of your imposter syndrome. If you are overthinking, in other words, you're spending a lot of time like spinning and doing lots of thinking that actually doesn't move you forward, doesn't progress you towards where you need to go. So, for example, if you spend time thinking, I don't know enough, or you spend a lot of time procrastinating, putting things off because you're caught up in your head about whether you're going to be able to do them, whether you're going to get it right, your fear of getting it wrong. And then for another example is if you have a fear that you're going to let other people down or you're not going to live up to somebody's expectations. If you're someone who spins in confusion a lot and really finds it hard to make a decision, right? The fear of like getting that decision wrong. All of this, which I would collectively call overthinking, is a sign you have imposter syndrome or your imposter syndrome has been triggered by an external event. Okay. A third way you know, based on how you're showing up to your work, that you have imposter syndrome is playing small. This is my way of describing anything you do to hide, to keep a low profile, to keep your head below the parapet. So, for example, you work really, really hard behind the scenes and you just hope like that enough people are going to notice, right? And give you the recognition just by noticing how hard you work. There's this phenomenon, I'm talking about this increasingly, of waiting to be rescued or chosen. Does that sound familiar? Where you're like doing all the right things, you know you're doing the right things, you know you're qualified, but you're not the one leading with that and asking for what you want or going out and being proactive about getting the recognition you deserve. You're waiting for somebody to like select you, select you and promote you, right? Without any different effort or specific effort on your part. Or when it comes to your confidence, you are waiting for somebody to sort of rescue you, to tell you that like how brilliant you are and then sort of somehow anoint you, right? Having identified you and rescued you and then put you up. It's the kind of you hiding and doing all the things in the background and leaving it to everybody else to elevate you, right? To proactively progress you. Another example of playing small is you have all these wins, you have all these achievements, and you keep them a secret, or you undervalue them yourself. You don't even acknowledge them yourself, or you downplay them. A classic example I see you doing is you wait until you're 100% qualified for a role, which is interesting because like how often do you feel I'm 100% qualified? By the time you're 100% qualified for a role, it's too late, right? You've moved beyond it. But that's not how you see it. You see that you need to be 100% qualified. And until you feel you are, you don't go for that role. All examples of playing small. Playing small is evidence. It's a sign that you have imposter syndrome. And then finally, the final category of behavior I want you to watch out for is self-sabotage. That's all of the things that you're doing to undermine your own confidence, undermine your self-esteem. Being haunted, like allowing yourself to be haunted by a past failure, like beating yourself up about it years later. You being your harshest critic, you being like anytime somebody gives you a negative feedback, you making that mean something about you instead of just useful information that you can use to develop and grow. These are all examples of self-sabotage. Telling yourself you didn't do it well enough, you didn't say it, you weren't articulate enough, you're not experienced enough. All of these thoughts, they undermine you. So if this is the typical narrative that you have in your head, your typical self-talk, this is all self-sabotage, and they are signs that you have imposter syndrome. So as you can hear, I've talked about what happens at the thinking level. That might be how your imposter syndrome shows up. There's what happens at the feeling whether level. That might be how your imposter syndrome shows up. But there's also all of those actions. What you're doing day to day in the office, that is an indicator that imposter syndrome is showing up. And then last but not least, let's look at the results you're getting right now in your career. Let's look at where you are. Like, is your experience of being a lawyer one where you're constantly overwhelmed and stressed? You know what that comes from? Overworking. So much of the time, it's the overworking that compounds the pressure of being a lawyer, which is already demanding. Are you constantly anxious and lawyering just feels so hard? Yet so much of that comes from you undermining yourself, your negative self-talk, that self-sabotage. Are you feeling left behind? Like, really? Are there more junior people being promoted beyond you or faster than you or above you? Are you not getting the recognition you deserve and feeling undervalued? Does your confidence lag way behind your achievements? If these are the results that you are getting, if this is the reality you are living right now, then these two can be signs that imposter syndrome is holding you back. So I've talked really clearly, really specifically to all of the signs of imposter syndrome, not just those classic ones of like, if you think you're a fraud, your success is down to luck. All the secret signs you may not have been aware of before now, but are all symptomatic. Okay, so now we've got all of those clear, and you should now be really able to identify, okay, and answer the question, do I have imposter syndrome? Or if the answer to that feels like right now in this moment, no, really recognize when something happens in the office, somebody says something or something is done, and that triggers any of those thoughts or feelings or actions or results for you, right? If that's how you respond, then that is a sign that your imposter syndrome has been triggered. Now that we've got that absolutely clear, and I think it's really interesting because that's such a broad spectrum of symptoms and signs. What it means is I've captured all of you. Like very few people listening to this podcast or watching this video or this particular post, very few of you will have heard all of those different ways that imposter syndrome shows up and feel, no, that doesn't happen to me. It's never happened to me. And I want to offer, by the way, if that is you, if you are part of the minority, then still hold tight and hang in with this session, because as you progress, as you put yourself into bigger and bigger rooms, those rooms are going to be whiter and whiter. So your environment is going to become even more likely to trigger imposter syndrome in you. So even if you're not experiencing it right now, there's a high possibility if you keep progressing that you will experience it at some time in the future. So this is still going to be immensely valuable for you. So stay tuned. All right. So now we know about all of these signs, these symptoms. What do we do now? The first and most important thing I want you to know is nothing has gone wrong. Okay, imposter syndrome is not a problem that you need to fix. I'm aligned with all of you on that. There is nothing in us that we need to fix. I want you to recall the definition I gave you of imposter syndrome, because all imposter syndrome is a question that you have to answer. So imposter syndrome is not a problem you need to fix. It's just a question you need to answer. The question of who am I? So as I've explained, your brain wants to just default to self-protect. It's looking around you. It's looking for the easiest answer to the question, who am I? It's taking all of the circumstances around you and it's just focusing on who you're not. As I said, nothing has gone wrong. This is what your brain is programmed to do. But this only half the story. Like, let's allow for the fact that we no longer live out in the wild with lots of saber-toothed tigers, and we need to just shut down and freak out and self-protect at the smallest, any change in the circumstances, anything that happens. That doesn't have to be our default anymore. We can actually choose how to answer the question, who am I? We can choose from the highest part of our brain, not from the part of our brain that's in emergency survival mode, but the part of our brain that can look at the information, that can source the information from the right place and come to a much more considered and appropriate answer. And all I mean by that's a really convoluted way of saying, we can stop looking outside of us to try and figure out who we are, and we can just look inside of us. Literally, the answer to your imposter syndrome is inside of you. And therefore, all you need to do is remember who you are. All you need to do to answer your imposter syndrome, to answer that question, who am I, is remember who you are. It's that simple, but it's that powerful. It's that important. It's that essential. Remember who you are, and you will always be able to answer your imposter syndrome. I want you to take a moment to really think about how powerful it is to every time your imposter syndrome is triggered and your environment or a past experience makes you question, who am I? You can turn inward and remember who you are, and that be the solution, that be the answer to your imposter syndrome. Remember who you are. What if it really was that simple? What if, like, all it took, all you had to do to stop beating yourself up over a past failure, to stop making negative feedback mean something about you, to stop needing external validation, to stop feeling so stressed, so overwhelmed, just like to have the confidence to be more visible, the confidence to build relationships with people who are different to you. If all it took to have the confidence to showcase your value was just to remember who you are. What if that was all it took? So you didn't need to wait for the circumstances outside of you to change. You didn't need to wait for the world to become more inclusive, your organization to become more diverse, less racist. You didn't have to wait for that. You didn't have to wait for someone to save you, keep telling you that you're great, keep telling you how much potential you have. If all you had to do is remember who you are. This, my friend, this is it. This is the answer to your imposter syndrome. It is the answer you have been searching for. You know, every time you go out and you do a search or you read a post or you ask at a talk and you say, how do I get rid of it? What do I do about imposter syndrome? How can I overcome it? This is the answer. Remember who you are. I promise you it is this simple. And when you follow what I'm teaching you, and when you are willing to implement the strategies and the process that I teach you to access the memory of who you are, like to actually do the remembering, if you follow what I am teaching, you are going to experience the most extraordinary transformation. I promise you. And I can promise you that because it has been at the most important and kind of core level. This has been my experience. This has changed my life. My imposter syndrome used to keep me so stuck. I had terrible self-doubt. I would achieve, but then feel so exhausted and so stressed out and so afraid of being exposed or being found out. My self-talk was terrible. I would constantly focus on like setbacks or failures. I would never see my wins. I would never recognize my achievements. I could never take like the confidence from them. And I was so sensitive to my environment. I so needed and wanted other people to be able to tell me I was great. And I was waiting for such a long time for someone to come and save me, like quote unquote, save me, to come and offer me the thing that was going to make me a confident person and make me someone who could achieve and set ambitious goals without the stress and the fear and the anxiety. I felt so exhausted trying all the tips and the tricks, and like some of them would work, the quick fixes, they would like help me show up in the moment, but I would always be left feeling the same. And it got to the point where I was so frustrated, I wanted to just stop being ambitious, stop setting goals. I wanted to drop out. And the only thing I hadn't done was the one thing that worked. Look for the answer inside of me. So I'd done all of those things, looking outside of me for the answer, when the answer was inside of me all along. And when I was willing to look, when I was willing to remember who I was, it started to work. And when it started to work, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that the answer had been inside of me the whole time. I'd been so busy looking everywhere else, looking to other people, looking outside of me to answer my imposter syndrome. And all along, all I had to do was remember who I am. As a result of that, as I started to remember who I am and really connect with who I am, right, at the deepest level, it made me so bold. It made me daring. It made me less afraid. I started taking action. I was like really good at like just getting to work. Every time I connected with who I was and I got to work, and like this is ongoing, right? This is still my process. Every time I do that, I keep taking action and my confidence keeps building. Right? And this is my relationship with imposter syndrome. something might trigger it, and usually that's me being daring, going for a more ambitious but sometimes it's a circumstance outside me. But I can catch it. I know exactly what's going on. I know the answer is to remember who I am. And when I do that and I get to work, my confidence only increases, my confidence builds. So here's how you know remembering who you are will work. It works by connecting you to that version of you who is capable of whatever you set your mind to. The more connected you are to the version of you that's capable of whatever you set your mind to, the more confident you will feel. And the more confident you feel and the more action you take when you get to work from that place of feeling confident in who you are, the more action you take from that place, the more you will succeed, the more your confidence will grow. Right? This is how confidence is built. This is how it works. You connect to that highest version of you. It makes you feel more confident in who you are. You go out, you get to work, you take action, and it creates more confidence over and over and over again until what happens is your imposter syndrome just becomes the thing that is constantly connecting you with the most powerful part of you and keeps your confidence growing. Hence, it stops being something that holds you back and becomes the thing that gives you the confidence to succeed. Now, here's what's going to happen. If it's not happening already as I'm talking through this, your brain, I know you're going to want to resist this. It's really normal to be expected because this is a different way of thinking about your imposter syndrome. You have been thinking about your imposter syndrome as something that holds you back and that will always be a bad thing you need to get rid of, right? You're thinking about your imposter syndrome as something that just makes you feel terrible, you need to get rid of. And you're also thinking about imposter syndrome as something that's really hard to solve, as something that there's like, is there a cure for it? Or is there a way? Like, these are the ways in which you've been thinking about imposter syndrome for a really long time. What I'm offering you is so simple. I know that your brain will at first want to reject it. It's looking for something more complicated. Your brain will tell you that you need more tactics and tricks, and that remembering who you are sounds a little bit airy and fairy and like intangible, and like, how are you supposed to do that? It's going to tell you that, okay, but even if that was the solution, like, actually, how does it even work? Remembering who I am, okay, I remember who I am. It might even offer you that, oh, well, I know my culture. I haven't lost sight of myself. I'm connected to who I am. So that might be the resistance your brain offers you. And it might just be like, yeah, but how does that help me, Caroline, when I walk into a meeting and I need to speak in front of 10 clients and there are 3 partners in the room, right? And I'm the senior associate or I'm the junior associate on the deal. How does that help me feel confident enough to speak out? Don't worry, my friends, I've got you. You need 2 things. Number 1, you need a process for remembering who you are. Remember what I said was that what you need to do is connect with that part of you that is capable of anything you set your mind to, right? And you need a process for that. You have not been until you've learned how to do that, that is not something that comes like quickly or easily or naturally to you. Remember, like, typically you're looking outside of yourself for reference to understand who you are. This process of looking inward, of looking for the answers inside of you, you want a process, a way. It's like me showing you where to look. I think that's the best way to describe it. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is know where to look. So you need a process, a series of questions to ask yourself that's going to shine the light in the right places. Okay. When you're looking inside of you for the answer to the question, who am I? So that's the first thing you need, a process for remembering, right? And then the second thing you need is a tool that's going to help you to recall. So a tool that will help you remember who you are in the moment that you need to. So in that moment when you're sitting in a meeting, everyone looks at you. It's the tool you can have in that instant that will connect you to that version of yourself that is capable of anything, so that you can feel confident, so you can then answer, respond, speak with confidence, okay? And then get the result that you want in that meeting, for example. What you need is the tool that you can, like, metaphorically whip out at any given moment to connect you with that version of yourself, to remember who you are in that moment. Okay, so this is how it works. This is why this is such a practical and effective solution, because there's a way to do it. There's a way to do the remembering, and then there's a way to use it practically in the workplace. Now, all of that might be sounding a little bit daunting. Your brain might even be resisting that and thinking, okay, now she's telling me not only do I need to remember who I am, which sounds a little bit vague. I don't really know what to do with that just yet. Now she's telling me I need two things. To remember who I am, I need a process and I need a tool. Okay, so where's the process and where's the tool? As I said, I've got you. I have figured all of this out for you. I've put it all together for you in a groundbreaking, transformational, I do not say that lightly, transformational online program that I created specifically to help you overcome imposter syndrome so it stops holding you back and instead becomes the thing that gives you the confidence to succeed, especially as a Black lawyer in a white world. It's called Confident Black Lawyers. And here's what it gives you. It gives you a proven process, not just any process, a process that I have proved and know works, a proven process for remembering who you are. It is those set of questions. It is the exercises that will have you investigating who you are so you can remember. There is so much that you have forgotten, so much that you are capable of, that you have just left and neglected and left behind you. The process I have created and I've put together for you, all you have to do is work through that. And I walk you through every step. That is how you remember who you are and connect with that version of you that is capable of anything. And then what else you get is you get a practical tool. It's called the imposter speech. Why is it called the imposter speech? Because it's the speech that you give yourself when your imposter syndrome is triggered. It's what you want to take out in the meeting, metaphorically, remember, right? It's the thing that your brain, you want to have in your brain, in the front of your mind to draw on, to say to yourself in your head or in the mirror before you go into a meeting, as you're walking through the door, as you're walking into a networking event, as you are sitting down to doing a daunting piece of work. You can pull out a speech at any time, a speech that you have prepared and memorized. That is the practical tool, and it will be with you always. This is the imposter speech. And what it will do is, in the moment you need it, you will be able to say it, either in your own brain or out loud, and it will recall, right? That's what it does. It will recall who you are. It will put you in that place of connecting to the version of you that is capable of anything. And it will do that in exactly the moment that you need it to. And then the third part of what you get in Confident Black Lawyers is a step-by-step practice. That's literally where I walk you through, okay, here's how you overcome imposter syndrome in the real world. Is this the situation? This is the situation. Okay, do this first, do this next, right? And it's literally the practice of overcoming your imposter syndrome again and again and again, every time it comes up. And every time you do that, it's another brick, like in the foundation, like of the success of your career, which is the confidence you have in who you are. Every time you experience imposter syndrome and you overcome it using this tool, you build another brick and you build more confidence. And so that practice applied in every different scenario that you encounter in the workplace, in the real world, that is a practice that I also walk you through step by step. So my friends, Confident Black Lawyers. If you are a Black lawyer and you want more confidence, you want the confidence to succeed. If you know, having listened to my description of how imposter syndrome can show up at your thinking level, at a feeling level, how you feel, in how you act, or in the results you are getting in your work right now. If you experience imposter syndrome and you want to feel more confident, then Confident Black Lawyers is for you. I created it with so much love, so much experience, so much knowledge, so much commitment to seeing you really fulfill your potential as a Black lawyer in this world. It's for you. By the way, it doesn't matter what stage of your career you are at. You could be a trainee, you could be a paralegal hoping to get a training contract. You could be a senior associate, a senior associate. Did I say senior twice? A junior associate, a senior associate, a partner, head of legal, general counsel. You could even be an aspiring lawyer or a future trainee. Any stage of your career, if you are Black, you identify as Black and you want to progress in this industry, Confident Black Lawyers is for you. I want you to know it's never too early. It's never too late to build confidence in who you are. So join Confident Black Lawyers. Here's what you're going to get. The moment you join, you get immediate on-demand access to the whole program, right? So to the 5-step confidence building process and practice that I just talked you through. You get instant access to all of that for 6 months. And what that means is, of course, you can fit it into your schedule. You can work at your own speed. You have a whole 6 months to do that, right? So that already shows that whatever stage you are at, however busy you are, there are no circumstances in which this program would be like too much for you or too long, or you can't make the commitments. I know that that's something that some of you have struggled with when it comes to my higher level coaching programs, where you worry, like, what if I can't show up to the coaching every single week? Or what if I miss a session? And this is what's so fantastic about Confident Black Lawyers is A, it's for you at any level, and B, you can fit it into any schedule, whatever you're doing and whatever stage you're at. What you also get, by the way, it doesn't just end at the process. It doesn't just end at the tool. It doesn't just end at the practice. You also get the community. I'm really excited about building a Confident Black Lawyers community. I want you to just think about even how it feels, or how it would feel, to be part of the Confident Black Lawyers as the community. Doesn't that immediately make you feel like you would have no choice but to feel more confident about who you are as a Black lawyer? Have more confidence in yourself. I want to build this community, and you get immediate access to that the minute you join, and the support of that community is so important. You also will get, in that 6-month period, 20 live coaching calls. Now, those coaching calls are in a group format. So remember, community is so important. Learning from each other. You will learn by either raising your hand and being coached by me directly on any of the course materials, on any circumstance that comes up in your career, anything. There's no limit. You can bring anything to coaching, right? I will coach you, or you will see somebody else being coached and learn from them. I call it 360 coaching, and it just gives you such an experiential way of learning the principles that I teach and these processes that I'm going to be that I offer you in Confident Black Lawyers. It's so powerful. So there'll be 20 live calls. You can come to as many or as few of them as you want, whatever you think you need or want to support you as you progress through the program. So just to recap, because I know I've covered a lot, you get on-demand access to the 5-step confidence building process and the practice, and you get that for 6 months. You also get access to the Confident Black Lawyer community for that 6 months. You get 20 live group coaching calls. You also get what I've created, as you'll see when you join. I've created a worksheet for all of the lessons. Now, you don't have to use the worksheet, but what's fabulous is if you want to use the worksheet and literally work through the lessons and have one place where you can keep all of your notes from the lessons, if that's how you want to work, that's how you learn, I've created all of the worksheets for you. So you can just, as well as having immediate access to the lessons, you've got immediate access to each worksheet. You can just download it and fill it in, or fill it in online. So good. I've just thought of everything to make this program so user-friendly, so easy for you, so effective for you, to get you this transformational result of overcoming imposter syndrome and building confidence in who you are. So excited. And then last but not least, I think this might well be one of my favorite features. What I have included in the way I've thought about this program and how it can be most powerful for you. I thought about you as a paralegal. I thought about you as a trainee going through your seats. I thought about you as a newly qualified and what that feels like. I thought about you as a student or as a graduate, like trying to get your new next role, right? Get an offer of a training contract or offer of a permanent role. I thought about you at the senior associate level going into partnership. I thought about you at the partnership level as you navigate the new challenges of being a partner. And I thought about how important it is to feel that you are in a community where you can always connect with and always come back to the confidence that you need in yourself, that you can build in yourself, to have access to that and just be in a room that energetically is about us really believing and looking deep inside of us, like for the answer, and that being the answer that helps us succeed. Staying in a community like that, staying in a community where you have constant access to the materials that help you build confidence in who you are, constant access to the community, constant access to that process, that practice. So at the end of 6 months, which is just so exciting, you can just become a member, an ongoing member of Confident Black Lawyers. You can just sign up for a membership that you just like renew on a monthly basis. So you can stay in the program as long as you want. You can stay in this program your whole career. It will keep giving back to you. It will serve you at every level. This is such an enormous, like, I hope you can hear and get the sense of the scale of at which I have been thinking for this program, for what it can do for you, how it can support you from the very first days, early days, from the beginning, from the moment you just even consider wanting to be a lawyer, and keep and be with you as you keep progressing and support you to keep progressing all the way to the top. It just being who you are to be a confident Black lawyer your whole career. This is my gift, my promise to you, my friends, and it is coming soon. So here are the details. I want you to jot them down. The doors open on Friday, the 15th of November, 2024. I will be sending a series of emails and posts in the week to 10 days leading up to that, in which I will be announcing that I'm going to hold a webinar about confident Black lawyers, about overcoming your imposter syndrome. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to save the date of the 15th of November. It's a Friday, 2024. I want you to look out for, like, make sure you are signed up to my mailing list. Okay, so I'll put the link actually in the notes to this video or this episode or this post. So make sure you join I'm actually going to create a register your interest waitlist. So join the register your interest waitlist for Confident Black Lawyers, because you'll be the first to hear. You're first to get details. Follow me on social media. Don't mind which platform you follow me on. I'll be on all of the platforms. I'll be showing up. I will be sharing the information that you will need. So make sure you're following me on your platform of choice. Okay, and the last bit of information, crucial bit of information I want to offer you, because I want you to start preparing for this right now, is I'm going to give you the cost of the program. Okay, so the cost of the program, and I've deliberately priced this so that I want to make sure as many people can do this program as possible. So for 6 months, if you are an individual doing this program, the cost for 6 months is £600. £600 for 6 months. 6 months of access to the 5-step process and the practice. 6 months of getting 20 live group coaching calls. 6 months of access to the Confident Black Lawyers community. And then the option, the possibility of renewing on a monthly basis to stay a member at the astonishing, totally affordable price of what was it? £48. I almost forgot then. £48 a month. All of this. £600 initial investment for the first 6 months. And then if you choose to stay, and why wouldn't you when you've done that 6 months? I know you're going to want to stay as part of this program, stay as part of this community, but then the optional £48 a month at the time of this recording, when it goes live, to stay in the process, to have access still to the coaching, to the training, to the practice, to the community. All of this I've done because I want to make sure as many of you at every stage of your career can get this essential, foundational result for you of being confident, of confidence in who you are. So there's only one question that you have to ask yourself and answer right now. Do I want to overcome my imposter syndrome so that it stops holding me back and instead it gives me the confidence to succeed? I'll speak to you next time. I cannot wait to share this program with you and to welcome you into the Confident Black Lawyers community. I'll speak to you soon.